In 2006, Dili found itself under fire and in crisis, and that a number of our troops and those from many other countries were faced with a very difficult situation trying to hold the peace. At that time, we had the possibility to work with a local organisation called HAC Association, which is a respected human rights group. And for those of you that know something about that period, one of the fault lines of conflict that was happening was between martial arts groups across Dili. And many of them were playing out long-running tensions, and some of them were acting out political interests in the moment. In order to try and intervene into this situation, we spent several weeks meeting their leaders in different parts of Dili and convincing them that it would be a good idea for them to sit together over perhaps even a year and try to talk out some of their differences, but also to train them in conflict analysis, in how do we express our frustrations and our disappointments non-violently, how do we resist political manipulation, and how can we mobilise those that are under our leadership, particularly in a martial arts group where people are learning particular arts used sometimes for violence. How can they mobilise those young people who are predominantly unemployed to do something good and positive to help build their nation? And as Helder described, the last 4 years have had a positive outcome. After several weeks, we managed to get all of these very violent men, 20 of them, in a room together. And we met in a small village above Dili in a Catholic orphanage where nobody would really identify where we were. And it was very secret, very off the record, because nobody wanted to know that anybody else to know that they were meeting together. On the first night, nobody slept because everybody was sure that the other one was going to kill them by morning. So we had a very tired group of people for the first few days. But over days, they began to realise that it was okay and they could actually talk to one another and that nobody was going to die through this small workshop process. It was a challenge for me as an Australian to be there because many of my colleagues were from other parts of the region and entirely acceptable, but they were a little bit suspicious about why an Australian was in their midst convincing them they should be with one another. That was fine until about the fourth day when we heard sirens blaring coming up the mountain towards us, and it was like, rear, 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 and suddenly in the midst of watching a movie on Gandhi, the non-violent peace activist, all of these men disappeared up the mountain into the jungle. And so I thought, oh no, what's happened now? We went out the front, and sure enough, there was at least 5 vehicles from the Australian military there getting out of their cars with guns and at the ready. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is the end, we've finished. So sure enough, in my best Australian Ocker accent, I said, okay boys, what's going on? And they said, we've heard there's 200 martial arts leaders up here on the mountain and we've come to shut you down and to protect you. And I said, no, we have 20 young men here in the Catholic orphanage and we're watching the Gandhi movie. And they said, oh, well, perhaps we have the wrong information. And I said, yes, perhaps you do, perhaps. And so we went on to talk about football, and slowly they went away. And slowly we went up into the jungle and brought all the guys back. But I have to say that then I began to realise that my Australian identity was a mixed one, because for the next few days nobody would speak to me and nobody wanted me to be involved in the discussion. And it was not because of who Emma Leslie was, but because of my identity as being Australian. And my first lesson to share with you tonight is the fine line for us as Australia, the peace builder in the Asia-Pacific region. That we need to play a very careful game between when we are insiders as people who are part of the region in solidarity with our friends in Timor-Leste, and when we can cross the line and begin to look like a colonial power or people interfering in others' business, particularly as white Australians in the Asia region. So it was a good lesson for me about no matter how good my intention is, how well-meaning I might be as Emma Leslie, in fact, my identity comes with me and I can't separate myself from that. And I need to be aware and deeply empathetic about the people that I work with and how they perceive me because of their own history.